looks like I'm on and live. Good evening. It looks like we've got 10 people watching already, but I can't see how to work out who you are, so I can't say hello to you individually. So hello, and please feel free to jump in the chat, say who you are, say hello. It's great to see you here. I'm a few minutes early, so I'm just going to give everyone just a little minute to pop online, and let me know in the chat if you have van life before, if you've never done it, if you want to do it, and of course if you've got any questions. And I'll just give everyone a minute to get online. Great, Nadia's online. Hello, good evening, Nadia. Perfect. Just let me know if you can sort of hear me and see me okay. For anyone that might not know, my name is Frankie, and this evening I'm going to be talking about van life. Even though I'm usually in a van, at the moment, as you can see, I'm in a lovely little holiday home. What I would say is that my internet is a little bit hit and miss. So if the internet drops out at all, please just let me know and I can pause or start again or try and go again. And yeah, I'll just give everyone a few more minutes. Nadia's just said that the sound's perfect, so that's good. I'm glad that you can hear me. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'll just go over a bit of an introduction about myself for anyone who hasn't watched the video or who didn't get a chance. Hi Laura, good to see you jumping online. And then hopefully that'll give people just a few more minutes. Hi Sarah, yeah, good evening. Hopefully that'll give people a few more minutes to get online. They can jump in sort of whilst I'm doing a bit of an introduction, and then if anyone's got any questions or if anyone thinks of any questions whilst I'm doing that, then please feel free to pop them in the chat. There were a couple of questions that I saw on the event page, so I'll go over those first of all before I come to any new ones, but I'll just keep an eye on them and hopefully I can flag any that I see as we go along. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Frankie, and I bought my first van about 2 years ago now. And I bought a tiny little white Renault Kangoo. If you don't know different van makes, Renault Kangoo is sort of like a postman-sized van. So I bought the smallest van that I could possibly lie down in because I'm absolutely petrified of driving. I'm a lot more confident now, but at the time I was so scared. A few days after buying my van, I had to drive onto a ferry and I was so scared that I literally bawled my eyes out. So bought the smallest van I could. Hi Katie, hi Shanice, thanks everyone for jumping in the chat. Feel free to jump in the chat and say hi as you log on, and then if you want to let me know if you're looking at van life, if you've already got a van, if you've got any tips, feel free to drop those in the chat as well, or of course if you've got any questions. For those of you that are just joining, I'm going to go through a little bit and just talk again about who I am in case anyone missed the video, and then I'll get into the questions and the answers. So my van isn't hugely kitted out at all. The story of how I bought it is a little bit of an adventure. So I gave myself 5 days. So I booked 5 days holiday from my job working in France. I flew back to the UK, I had planned to spend a day looking at vans, buy a van, kit it out, drive it back. Day 1, couldn't find one. Day 2, still couldn't find one. Day 3, I start to get worried. Day 3 in the evening, decide to go slightly outside of my budget, buy the van that I've got now, and then had a day and a half, 2 days to put the bed in it and drive it back to France. So it was definitely a whirlwind. If you're looking at getting a van now, my biggest tip would be to take time to do it. Don't do what I did. if you take time, you can look around so many different options, and you can wait till there's a bargain, and it will definitely pay out in terms of sort of value for money and what you can buy. My van isn't hugely kitted out at all, and it's not sort of amazingly Instagram worthy. So the only two things that I've done for it, I have insulated it, so it's got insulation in the walls and the ceiling, and all that is that's some sort of plywood, is it called? I don't know, some sort of like thin wood stuff, and then glued onto that on the inside, so between the wall of the van and the wood type stuff, is like radiator insulation foil that you can buy in a roll for like £3 or something, and that's all I've got, and it works really well. It keeps it cool in the summer and then warm enough when we've camped out and there's been frost on the ground outside. I wouldn't take it anywhere really, really cold, but it's certainly done the job for us. I call myself a part-time van lifer, and that's because over the winter I tend to go to the mountains, so I'll be working out in Chamonix, and when I work there my van is just not kitted out for it. Some people do sort of camp in their vans in Chamonix, but it just wouldn't work for me, and so when I'm there I stay in a house, and then I also work for a film event company and I do tours with them. And when I'm on tour with them, I tend to stay in hotel rooms or Airbnbs or wherever they put me up that's near the event. But then in between times, I'm in my van, and I've done one longer trip. So I've done a 2-month trip from the west coast of France to the east coast of France. And I've also done, for a period of time after I just bought my van, I was at university. So I did lots of weekend trips and lots of 5 to 9s. So I've kind of had the whole spectrum of what having a van could be. Hello to everyone that's popping up in the chat. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you to everyone that's logged on. So I was just doing a bit of a background to myself, and then I think I'm going to jump on with the first question. So I've made some notes. So I think I'm going to start with Claire's first question, and she'd asked about how to find places to sleep and how to find places to feel comfortable and sort of where you know that it's a good spot. My biggest tip, and I hope if you take anything away, take this away. My biggest tip is to use the app Park for Night. So that's PARK, like park, the number 4, and then night. It's amazing. It's like a giant map, and people can add in locations where they've stayed the night. You can add in locations that are just car parks, that are paid car parks, that are campsites, or that are more like natural or rural spots. It's amazing, and it's got spots all over the UK, and then we've also used it all over France and all over Spain as well. So I definitely recommend that. One thing that's really good about it is that it's got reviews, so people can stay there, and if they've had a terrible night, if it's been really noisy, if there's been sort of like unfriendly activity going on, or they felt it was dangerous, they can leave a negative review. And then also you get places that are really highly reviewed, and it's just a really good way of finding it. I've also had recommended, but I've never used, Britstops. So that's a sort of subscription type thing. You buy a book, and in the book is different places you can park up, and it'd be like pubs or shops where generally it's free to stay as long as you maybe like buy a meal at the pub or something like that. Generally that's more for camper vans or vans that are really kitted out and don't need facilities at all. And I think it's about £30 to buy the book, and then they update the book every year, and if you've got the book you can stay in all the places. So if you've got a more kitted out van or a camper van, that's definitely one to recommend. In France I also use campingcarpark.com. It is amazing. France is really, really good. They're so set up for vans. You've got so many public places where there's car parking and toilets and water. Some of them you have to pay a little bit of money. Some of them are completely free. they're all over, and this website seems to have them all. So it's a fantastic tool that you can use. I definitely recommend it. If you can't find anywhere in any of those places, I also use Google Satellite a lot. What's really good is on Google Satellite, you can tend to see where there's little car parks, or maybe car parks in trees or car parks near parks. And that's a really good way of finding somewhere where you might not be able to stay, or you might be able to stay, and you can just drive over, check it out and see what you think. Sometimes as a last resort, I might do a bit of stealth camping, or what I call stealth camping. So that is my van. Unless I get out, you don't actually know that I'm sleeping in there, and that's really handy. So if I completely run out of places to stay, and it's, I'm doing a long drive, it's the middle of the night, I need to pull over, I can sort of use Google Maps to find a residential area, just pull over in a little side street of free parking. I don't like doing that very often, and I'd say that's really a last resort, because you need to make sure you're being respectful of the places that you stay and don't want to upset anyone. But also, if you're stuck and you're out of places, just look for a dead-end street, and generally you'll find somewhere to stay. I'm just going to get a glass of water. Nobody go anywhere. I'm going to disappear. I've just got one over here. Okay, I'm back. Sorry. There is no way I was going to get through that hour without a glass of water. So sorry about that. And hello to everybody that's jumped in the chat since last time. Let me know if I'm going slow enough, or if you've got any questions as I'm talking, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Along with finding somewhere to sleep is how to know if it's a good place to stay, how to feel safe. The main thing I'd say is really go with your gut. If you turn up and you feel like it's not safe, or if you're sleeping and you don't like what's going on, go somewhere else. I think there is one situation where myself and my girlfriend had parked up, and there were loads of cars coming backwards and forwards. There was loads of shouting. There was what sounded like people doing handbrake turns, and it was just really, really busy. And we were just like, we don't like it up here. We're going to move on. But then there was also another time where we were parked up on a hilltop, and there were loads of teenagers in cars doing what seemed like the same thing, like driving up and down and shouting and playing music, but it didn't feel the same. So that time we were just like, oh, they're just kids, it's cold outside, they just want somewhere to go. And we didn't feel threatened by them at all, which, I mean, maybe both situations would have been fine, but I'd say just always go with your gut. And if you feel safe, hopefully you are safe. And if you don't feel safe, definitely move on. There are a few good tips as well. So I like to always arrive in daylight and then spend the evening wherever I'm parked out. And I just think it can give you a better vibe for where you are. And then also, if you speak the local language, you can talk to locals. And, if you're parked up somewhere where people are walking dogs and they're all friendly and chatty, then it's probably a good sign. If you do start chatting to them, they might tell you that it's a terrible place to park and recommend somewhere else, or they might reassure you that it's a really good spot. So that's definitely something that I would recommend. I'd also say look out for warning signs like fly tipping or excessive rubbish or loads and loads of alcohol cans. If there's any of those signs, then it's probably not a great spot. And generally, if there's not, it tends to be a nice spot. I personally like finding car parks that are lined with trees so that you can't see from the road, or maybe they have a little nook where you can kind of hide behind. And I think for me, it just feels safer that if someone was driving past, they don't necessarily know you're there. I don't know if it adds safety or not, but that's what helps to make me feel more comfortable. I would say another tip for staying safe is to avoid huge tourist places where you know that vans have been broken into in the past. It seems so sensible and such an obvious tip, but you know, it happens again and again and again. So definitely avoid places that are huge tourist places. Or if you do stay there, stay in a campsite. Like, just pick a really nice campsite and stay there for the night. Whilst I'm saying that, I would also say that there's sometimes sort of a idea that to van life you need to live off the grid and avoid campsites, and that if you're staying in campsites you're not doing it right. For me, that's like utter rubbish. It just depends where I am and what I'm doing and what I need. On my Pyrenees trip, I'd planned to stay in a campsite once a week, and actually, because of the people that I met and, you know, the generosity of local people and the fact that I bumped into friends along the way, meant that the first month I didn't stay in any campsites. And then in Spain, we needed Wi-Fi, and so I think 4 out of 3 nights we ended up staying in a campsite. And they were both different experiences, but they were also both amazing. And I would just say that don't forget, if you are staying in campsites, you're putting money into the local economy and could be supporting a small business, and that's just as beneficial as staying off the grid. And especially in sort of France and Spain and other countries around Europe, you can often find campsites that are just a couple of euros a day, and over the course of the trip aren't going to make a huge difference to your budget. So I'm all for campsites. Just a few more tips on this. I would say that when you're picking a camp spot, a good place to park is somewhere where you've got several options. So if you can find a nice camp spot and you know that here and here and here there are other options if this one doesn't turn out nice, that always reassures me so much. My biggest worry is always, what if I get there and it's horrible? And actually, if I get there and it's horrible and I know that I've got a plan B, it's not the end of the world anymore. And particularly if you were to get woken up in the middle of the night by cars driving around or anything else like that, knowing that you've got somewhere else nearby to go it's just really reassuring. But I'd say that that's actually never happened. I've never had to drive somewhere new in the middle of the night. So, I mean, try and find a good spot first of all, and then hopefully you don't have to move on. Another good tip is to get onto other Facebook groups and see where other people park out. So there's a really good Facebook group called Women with Camper Vans, and of course on the AQ page as well. If you know you're going somewhere in particular and you can't find a good park spot, type on and see if anyone else has stayed there and see what they'd recommend. I hope that answered the question. If it didn't, or if you've got any other questions from that, then feel free to just jump on in the chat. I'm trying not to look at it too much, but I am keeping an eye on it, so hopefully I can stay with it. And yeah, just give me a thumbs up if you're all still here. I'm going to move on to Donna's questions, and Donna asked the questions that I think any concerned member of my family asks me, and that is, how do you cook, how do you shower, and where do you go to the toilet? Everyone asks that. I'll start with cooking. So actually, if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't think I've got the ideal setup for cooking. And next time I invest in my van, or if we decide maybe to get an upgrade next year, that's the first thing that I really want to upgrade. I have a little Halfords camping stove that uses just the little gases like this. It's only got one ring, and because it uses these little gases, it's quite expensive, and I don't think it's particularly good for the planet. But it was very cheap when I got it. I got it as part of a bundle that was €50, and in it was this camping stove, 2 chairs, some jump leads, a load of buckets, all my pots and pans, a first aid kit and an AA kit. So it served me well, and it's been great value for money so far. But going forwards, I'd like a slightly better one. I think one that could take bigger gas canisters and had 2 rings would probably be better. I also have a tiny little stove that I take when I go out camping, and it literally is like this big and uses this big gas canisters as well. It's quite handy to have the two because that way you can cook your breakfast and make your tea at the same time. But also I have survived with one ring for quite a long while. I don't have a fridge, so I tend not to eat lots and lots of fresh vegetables all the time. I'll tend to get fresh veg when I do my shopping, and then in between I eat a lot of tinned veg. So most of my meals tend to be one pot meals. I eat a lot of sort of camping food like couscous and chickpeas and ratatouille is my go-to staple. One meal that is a top tip that I learned about 4 months ago, changed my world, is tinned potatoes. Drain them, cut them up, season them with whatever seasoning you have, and fry them. And they are the best thing for breakfast. Literal game changer. If you take away anything from tonight, take away park for night and tinned potatoes. That's it. That's all you need for van life. Don't even need a van. For the shower, I have showered in lots of lakes and streams, and sometimes in the sea. It gets a bit salty. It's quite nice. What I'd caveat that with is that please, oh, Nadia's just said good tip on the potatoes. I'll try that. I'd recommend it. Don't even worry about waiting until you try it in a van. Just have it for breakfast tomorrow morning. It's great. Showering. What I'd say is just be really respectful of biodiversity, and if you're gonna wash in a shower or if you're gonna wash in a stream or a lake or anything like that, don't do it with shower gel and soap and anything like that, and don't be doing it if you're using mosquito spray or sun cream. But also it's potentially the best experience ever, and I always think that I'm not sure what's dirtier, the river or me. On a more serious note, when I'm not in the middle of nowhere and showering in rivers, I've spent quite a lot of van time actually working and needing to go to co-working spaces and sort of pop into work and do things like that. And my advice there is I really like climbing gyms. You can pay to go climbing and then use the shower, and quite often use the Wi-Fi or the co-working space that's at the climbing gym as well. And that's really handy and a good way of tagging it on and not really spending any extra money. If you're on a longer trip, having campsites in between wild camping spots is a great way. Campsites often have showers. Campsites usually always have showers. And, you know, if you're going to park up for one night, charge all your electrics and have a shower at the same time, that's a great idea. And a lot of campsites will also let you pay to shower rather than pay to stay. So if you are determined that you want to go and stay in a really remote place with a remote, lovely view, but you want a shower, you can sometimes pull up, have a shower in the afternoon when other people are maybe not using it. And I've done it in France and it was just a couple of euros. So that's always a handy tip. I would also say that swimming pools are great, not to shower in the swimming pool, but swimming pools always have shower facilities. So you can go have a shower, have a nice swim, have another nice shower, and it's a great way of spending the afternoon, particularly if it's an indoor swimming pool and it's raining outdoors. That is a great way of spending a rainy afternoon. And I would also say that in the UK, I used MoveGB last time that I was sort of actually probably van lifing in the UK. And that's because MoveGB, if you don't know, it's an app that sort of lets you have a gym membership. You pay the monthly membership and then you have different tokens that you can use at different gyms or facilities all around the country. And that was really handy because it meant that if I was parked up in Scotland, I could go to a gym in Scotland and then I could use my local climbing wall as well. And it wasn't very expensive to then have a nice time at the gym and also have the shower. And then the last resort is you just use a bucket wash. It's a bit like a regular wash, except it's in a bucket. What could be simpler? And then the final question from Donna. Oh no, it's not actually. She did ask another question as well. The penultimate question from Donna was, how do you go to the loo? So lots of vans have either chemical or sort of compostable toilets. I don't have those facilities at all. And that means that it's a lot harder for me to go off the grid, and I have to be a lot more careful when I do. When I do my van trips, I spend a lot of time in really rural places, and it's fairly similar to what you would do if you were camping or walking or doing multi-day trips, in that you might go for a wild, wonderful wee, but that you maybe be careful with wild, wonderful number twos. Definitely make sure, if you're van lifing, to be really careful again about the biodiversity in the environment. The amount of places where I've parked up where there's been like tissue litter everywhere. Like, tissues really don't biodegrade the way you think they will. They take ages and they're not very nice, and wet wipes are even worse. If you really need to use tissues when you're out and about, bag them and take them with you, like you would if it was a nappy. Easy. The app Park for Night is really good in that it tells you places that have facilities. There's also all different websites that will tell you where public toilets are. And I go for a lot of like supermarket trips. You know, you need your daily essential, you need your daily bread, you might need your daily apple, your banana, your wee. Combine it all together. I always think about, in the film Free Solo, Alex Honnold talks about the fact that he parked out in a supermarket car park for 6 years, and that was where he lived. And that's not just because it's convenient to get food. Like, he was definitely washing in their sinks and using all their facilities. And I'm trying to think if I've got any other tips for that I've not mentioned. Oh, just again, if you don't have facilities and you're in an area where you don't think any of the above options work for you, stay in a campsite again. They're great. They have toilets too. Last question from Donna, and then I think I had another question on the event that I'd not seen before that was from Suzanne, and then I'll put it into the chat. So if anyone's got any questions about van life or anything they want me to talk about, please feel free. I've seen that there's a few in there already, and I've not had a chance to read them yet. Sorry, I'm not going to read them now because I'll end up just reading them and not talking. But please feel free to drop any in there if you have them. So last question from Donna was about, how do you spend rainy days? In my head, it never rains. It literally doesn't. And then every time it does rain, I am so shocked and so unprepared. And it happens quite a lot in England, and I'm just never prepared for it. Like, I just don't know where it comes from. My van's not set up for rainy days at all. I don't even have a tarpaulin that I can put out the back. So if it rains, you have to keep the door shut or everything gets wet. I do keep meaning to put a tarpaulin out the back, and this is what I'm going to suggest you do if you have a small van. You can buy a tarpaulin, and then you can buy tent pole extenders. I know you can get them from Decathlon, but I bet you can get them from anywhere. And then just attach your tarpaulin to your van with magnets and use your tent pole extenders, and that would be the simplest way to do it. Or you could buy a really fancy one, or you could have a bigger van and cook indoors, but I've not done any of those things. So what do I do on rainy days? I get really wet. I think there's maybe 4 different options for what you can do on rainy days. Number 1 is embrace it and get wet. My favourite weekend in the van was one weekend just in the Surrey Hills, and it was tipping it down with rain, and we went and swam in a river in the rain, and then ate chips in a pub, and then went climbing, and then the next day we went for a walk in the rain. And it was just, even though it was raining, it was so much fun. And I think it was even better knowing that other people have been indoors, and maybe if I'd have had a nice warm house to curl up in, I would have curled up in the nice warm house and I would have missed out on the fun that I had. Rainy days are a great day for life admin. They tend to be days when I go to the laundrette and I do all my washing, or I go to a co-working space and I do any admin that I've got to do. And also just indoor fun, like if you're going to go to a climbing gym or a museum or an art gallery, there's so many places that you can go for free that are indoor activities. And then my last thing that I might do on a rainy day is just shut all the doors, have the lights on, and then just play endless games of cards or bananagrams or anything else. And yeah, I think that's it. As I say, I don't have very many rainy days. It never rains in my head. So yeah. I'm just going to do a quick scroll through the chat and then I'll maybe go. I've got my phone with me as well. I know there's a few questions on the event. So I'll go to those next. Just bought a VW T6 conversion last week. Woohoo! Congratulations. That's so exciting. Bought my van privately, not from a dealer. Yeah, that's cool. I bought my van. No, actually, I think I bought my van from a dealer in the end, but I was trying to buy it privately because you can often get a better deal. So the playoff is if you buy it privately, you might be able to get a better deal, but can be less reliable. If you buy it from a dealer, they've got their reputation, so likely to be a better deal, but no, not like. Might just be more expensive, but likely to be more reliable. Sorry. I've been recommended buying an extended warranty because repairs are so expensive. Do you have any experience of that? And if so, good or bad? Thank you. No, I don't actually. I don't even know what an extended warranty is, if I'm honest with you. I'm not very good at technical stuff, so I'm not very good at insurance and VAT, and I always do my VAT on like the last possible day and extended warranty. Repairs are so expensive. I'd agree with that. So I bought my van in very much a rush. I bought the best van that I could, considering the vans that were on offer at the time, and my van cost about $3,500 to buy and to kit out and to get on the road. But then since then I've had to, it was 130,000 miles it had already driven, and since then I've had to do all the brakes and the alternator, and my turbo is like a little bit funny and my particulate filter is a little bit funny, and basically it's like crumbling. Like my warning lights are basically always on. I mean, it survives. I've never broken down, just had lots of warning lights. I did break down one time. Anyway, yes, repairs can be expensive. No, sorry, I don't have any advice about extended warranty. Lots of people saying good tip on the potatoes. Yep, that's my favourite. From my good friend Nat. Hey Frankie, Mountain Bothies Association had a good tip on wild toilet trips. Stay 100 metres plus away from the body, 100 metres plus away from running water, and bury it. Yes, absolutely, I would agree. Pack a shovel. Other great advice is using moss to clean up instead of toilet paper. You find it everywhere. It's super soft. Good advice. Yeah, if you're going to go wild, follow wild advice. How complicated was the conversion? Would one need to have good DIY skills? Great question. I have no DIY skills, to the point where I got help to do my conversion. I was really, really lucky that someone was doing some work on their own and they let me use all their tools and all their expertise. And mine had some wood panels on it already, the sort of thin wood, whatever it is. And we took them off, unscrewed them, and then we went to screw them back on, and I just couldn't even use a screwdriver to screw them in. Everyone else had done like 6 screws and I was still on the first one and didn't know how to use a screwdriver. You don't need to have DIY skills to start at all. You don't. There's so much on YouTube. You will get DIY skills by the end. depending on how complicated you want your van conversion to be, depends on how good your DIY skills will get. So mine is very literally the wood panel stuff on the side, and that's screwed in, and there were some holes already to screw it into, so that made it super easy. We then put up a frame for the bed, so I have a double bed, but this side is fixed and this side is not fixed. We put up a frame for the bed, and that was glue and screws, and then cut the bed out. So I needed to know how to use an electric screwdriver, an electric saw, how to measure, how to cut. I didn't know any of those things. I'm really glad I had people to help me. I would say that I feel like 80% confident that having done it once, I could do it again. And yeah, once you've bought, I would say that was the biggest thing for me, is I didn't want to buy an electric screwdriver thing and a sander and all those things. If you've got anyone that can help you, that's a great tip. And otherwise, also the Women with Camper Vans Facebook group, there's lots and lots of women there who are doing it on their own, who might not have any previous experience. I've also got a friend who's doing a fantastic van conversion. She's going all out with solar panels and cutting windows and doing all sorts of things I'd have no idea how to do. She started out by attending a festival all about women van camping, and she got loads and loads of advice and workshops there. So you don't need skills to start, but if you pick it up along the way, then you can definitely make it up. Does my van have a name? Yes, it does. My van is called Caroline with a K, because it's a Kangoo. And then also from the Outcast song, where it's Caroline, Caroline, mighty fine, mighty fine, mighty fine, only gets you somewhere half the time. And that's because I think she's literally only going to work half the time. Works a lot more than half the time. It's great. What is your favourite new skill or tool that is new to you because of converting your van? Actually, driving confidently. That's not a DIY skill. I guess it is. But that's definitely, when I bought my van, as I said at the start, I was absolutely petrified of driving. And driving by myself and driving the big 2-month trip from west to east France I just got so much more confident. People always ask me if I think I became a better driver. I don't think I became a better driver. I think I became a more confident driver. And I say that because before I'd be like super vigilant and like driving like this. I'm really, really scared. And then by the end of the trip, I would be like going round a roundabout, eating a banana, trying to change gear, doing up the radio, fiddling with my sat nav. I'm a very vigilant driver, all at once. So yeah, I'd definitely say driving. In terms of DIY, I think just the ability to see what's involved and what you might need. When I first started, I wouldn't have even known whether, like what to go to B&Q and ask for. And at least now I know that it would be like insulating stuff, flimsy wood stuff, and strong wood stuff. And yeah, that's super handy. There's a few questions in the live chat. I'm just going to check my phone very, very quickly because there was a question in the Facebook group and I don't want to miss it. So just bear with me whilst I pull that up. It won't be a second. Here it is. The question was, we are considering buying a van, but at that very early stage where the options are overwhelming. We don't want to blow all of our savings, but at the same time, we've seen people spend less upfront and then spend the next couple of months and years having to plough endless money into it. Any tips on getting that balance between reliability and cost would be great. Absolutely. Definitely a balance there. I didn't spend a lot of time looking into mine. had to get one with high mileage, and then have had to do just the repairs ongoing. I think when you're budgeting to get a van, being aware of what costs you might want to do at what time is a good idea. So get one that's as low a mileage as you can afford. That will definitely pay off. Wait and shop around until you find one that's a low mileage in your budget. Get one with a full service history. If it's got a full service history and the least number of owners possible, it's more likely that it's going to have been well looked after. And then I'd also say that think about what your priorities are. So obviously some makes, some styles and some sizes are going to be more expensive than others. It's good to think about whether it's better to go for a more reliable brand, but that might be more costly if it did break, or maybe less reliable, but that's cheaper. And that's really sort of a personal choice, and it depends where you are as to what vans cost what amounts of money. I would also say, yeah, I think that's just the main thing, is just I would go for low mileage. That's what I was going to say. Think about what stages you might need to get certain repairs done. So cam belts, which I've learnt, are the main thing that hold all the bits of the engine together. They fray and need replacing, and there are other parts that need replacing generally at certain stages throughout a van's life. If you replace them when you need to, your van will last ages, forever. If you don't replace them, it completely explodes, apparently. So think about, for your make of van, what might need replacing at what stage, and that'll be a good indication of how much it's going to cost you going forwards. And also, if you know that it might cost you that, so if you know that in, I don't know, 10,000 miles you're going to have to replace something, you can already budget ahead for that, and it won't be a shock when you do have to replace it. And the more money you can spend at an outset, if you plan well and you get a bargain, probably the more reliable it's going to be. A great tip that I was told is also that you can get AA breakdown cover with parts and repairs. That doesn't cover the entire repair, but it can cover a certain amount of the cost of the parts, and that's really handy. And it was really reassuring you can get it European cover. That was really, really reassuring for me when I did my first road trip. I'd not had the van for very long. I was going to go by myself, and I was really scared of breaking down and then having to spend loads of money somewhere where I didn't really know where I was. So having the extra breakdown insurance was really, really handy. Also a nervous driver because I rarely drive. How long did it take you to feel more relaxed? Actually, I don't think it took that long. As soon as I was driving by myself, and I realised that when you drive by yourself, no one shouts at you, no one tells you that you should be driving faster, no one tells you you should be driving slower, no one tells you that you should be doing X, Y, Z. It was so much easier. So if I felt nervous, I'd just drive a little bit slower or pull over and let other cars overtake me. And then days where I was feeling more confident, I might drive at the speed limit, or, you know, sort of not drive everywhere at 30 miles an hour. And I could put the radio on, and I did a lot of driving straight away. So after I got the ferry, I then did about a 5-hour drive in 2 stages, back down to where I was working in France. And I was still fairly nervous at the end of that drive. But after that, that was probably the first stage where I was like, wow, I was petrified of doing this, and now I've done it. And if I can do this, then even though I'm still scared, I know that I can do the next step, and then hopefully the next step after that. Have you had any issues with condensation in your van? So when I painted my van, I painted it with bathroom paint, and any bits that are still sort of like wood exposed, I varnished with like waterproofy varnish. And that's been super handy because I'm not worried at all about the fact that the paint's going to peel or it's all going to go mouldy. I've not had any issues with condensation. It's generally fine in the summer. I leave a window open. In the winter, when it's freezing cold, I mean, like literally frost outside, freezing cold, and there's two of us in the back, it does get wet on the ceiling. I've never found it an issue. I just sort of keep a rag and dry it off if I need to, or leave it to air out during the day, have the windows open for a little bit. I have to have the doors open to cook, so we always cook outside, and I think that helps because it means that any steam from the cooking is already going outside. And also, whilst we're cooking and whilst we're outdoors, the doors are open and it's getting like a big blast of air through it. I've got double doors at the back and then doors either side, sliding doors, and that means that when you open them all, there's a really big draft that goes through, and that helps to just keep it aired out and nice. What would be the top feature you'd want in a van upgrade? I think I mentioned it earlier. I'd want a better cooking system. I'd like to be able to cook indoors, actually, especially for rainy days, and I'd like 2 rings. And then apart from that, I think we'd quite like a little bit more space. So myself and my girlfriend are spending a lot of time doing trips together, and actually as 2 people with 2 people's worth of gear, it would be really nice to have extra gear storage. We don't need extra living space, but we do need extra storage. We've got really gear intensive hobbies, so like climbing and paddleboarding and skiing, and when you put all that gear together, it's not fitting in a Kangoo anymore. So I think we'd like a little bit more storage. And Nat talking about sleeping in a car. I would say that as well, actually. If you're wanting to do van life, but thinking that, you know, you have to wait until you're in Canada or in an amazing place, or you have to save up so much money, you actually don't. Like, you can go car camping, you can hire like a little camping van for a week, or you can just get like a small van like I have that's a lot cheaper than the huge Instagram worthy vans. And there's just sort of low cost ways of doing it, and sometimes I think the low cost ways are a lot more fun. Sarah, great question. What's the biggest difference between solo van trips and trips with a partner? I would say that there's a few differences. On solo van trips, I seem to have a lot more time. So I spend a lot of time reading or just sitting and thinking, a lot of time meditating. And I literally don't know where my time goes. But apparently you don't have spare time if you've got a girlfriend. Who knew? I was worried that doing it with someone else meant that you'd be less likely to talk to other people. So when you're traveling solo and when you're van tripping solo, if you want to talk to anyone, you have to talk to people that you don't know, and you're often in a position where you do need to. So the trip that I did, I was hoping to climb, and I didn't have any climbing partners at all, anything lined up. And I would just go on Facebook groups and message people and say, would you come and climb with me? But so I was sort of worried that maybe being with someone else, I wouldn't be forced to be a social, and I wouldn't be forced to put myself in uncomfortable situations. But I'm really lucky that my girlfriend's super chatty and loves talking to new people. And so I would say that actually it's the opposite. And I meet more people for traveling with someone else than I did when I was traveling by myself. So that's nice. And she's actually just written in the chat, trips with partner are obviously better. Trips with a good partner are obviously better. Yeah. And I think that's the end of the questions so far. So let me know. I've maybe got about 10 more minutes if anyone's got any other questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me. It's been fantastic. I'm gonna sort of leave you with what I guess are my main tips. hopefully a bit of a summary. So I would say the most important thing is just to get started with whatever you have, whatever you can afford. There is no wrong way of doing it. You might hear some people saying that you're only van life if you're, actually living in it full time. You're only van life if you're doing this. You're only van life if you're off grid. I don't believe in any of that. Go car camping. It's the best fun. My first road trip was a car camping trip where there were 4 of us packed into the cheapest car we could hire and 2 tents. And it was so packed that as we were driving, you had to sort of sit like this. And it's what really triggered the dream for me to buy a van and do a van road trip. So definitely just start with whatever you have. Laura's jumped in the chat and said, what trips do you have planned? Pre-lockdown, we were hoping to do a trip in Spain where we'd go visit lots of different climbing areas in Spain. And I would really like to still do that one day. Maybe it's possible. Also, I would think it would be really nice to just drive around the UK and visit all the people that we haven't seen for so long in lockdown. I think there's so many beautiful places in the UK to explore, and sort of got so many friends that obviously we've not seen for a long time now, and that would be a really cool opportunity. My next trip that I've actually got planned, that I'm just waiting for lockdown to finish, isn't actually a van trip. I'm hoping to cycle around the UK, cycle from different crags to different crags, and I'd like to cycle to these climbing spots and take my camera with me, take photos of different climbers, and sort of the overall aim is that I'd like to interview women, particularly women who are older than me, and just talk about their lives and what they would say to the younger version of themselves. So if anyone's got any tips for bike packing or sort of planning a big trip, hit me up. I have no idea where to start at the minute. I've written it down, but I don't have a clue. I watched the Skillshare that was on the other night. It was about bike packing, and I've got so many tips from that. But if anyone else has any advice, please do hit me up. You can get me at Frankie_Dewar on Instagram, or just send some words of encouragement. That would be nice as well. What makes van adventures better than other adventures like camping? It's the freedom. 100%. I can answer that straight away. When you have a van, whether you live in it or whether you live in a house or whatever your situation is, you can decide, spur of the moment, to pack up and leave or to pack up and go on an adventure. You don't have to check the weather. You don't have to plan where you're going. You don't have to worry about anything. You can just go and decide when you get there. And actually, my Pyrenees trip was very much like that. I would wake up in the morning, I'd have no idea where I was going. I'd just start driving in a direction and then pick a road sign or pick a town or maybe pick up a hitchhiker and see where they were going and just let the universe guide me. And I think that's the coolest thing about van life, is you can really just be open to opportunities and let the universe guide you. And just another comment in the chat, I bought a 2010 VW Caddy last December. I love it more than my 2014 Peugeot 208. I love driving my van, knowing I have a home on my back. Yes, absolutely. That's my other favourite thing. You don't have to pack. Well, you do have to pack. But you pack all your everything. You can't forget your raincoat if you've got your house with you. You can't forget your hat, your sunglasses, your house keys. You can't forget anything. It's all there. If you plan to go for a hike and you turn up in the car park, it's pouring it down with rain, it doesn't matter. You've got your waterproofs. If you turn up in the car park and it's bright sunshine, it doesn't matter. You've got your shorts and trainers. Literally, you have everything with you. And yeah, I just find it really reassuring. So yeah, thank you. Hopefully that's given everybody a little bit of an insight into van life. If there's any questions that anybody thinks of at a later date, please feel free to drop them in the event and I'll check through it over the next week or so. Or as I said before, you can also get me at Frankie_Dewar on Instagram. I'll be happy to answer any other questions. If you think of anything, or if you get a van and then want to know any tips or good accounts to follow, just send me a message and I'll be more than happy to answer. I'm going to do a quick shout out and say thank you as well to the Adventure Queens group for being so inspirational, providing me with endless advice and giving me a platform tonight to share my stories. Thank you very much. Thank you to Nadia and Laura for being all tech and arranging everything. And if you've not done so already, you can subscribe to the Adventure Queens channel and it will just help more people to see the event. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I hope I've given you some tips and some advice and you've enjoyed it. And yeah, if there's anything else you think of in the future, then please let me know. Otherwise, happy adventuring. Thank you. And I'm going to leave it there. Good night, everybody. Thanks so much for joining.